lost a lot of money. I don't even want to work it out, but I'm going to say at least, well, I don't want to say double figures, but there's a lot of Bitcoin that I could have easily had by just not doing it. And when we think
Mm.
about some of them holds actually went like down 70% versus Bitcoin is massive. And I was lucky enough to have profit from the price cycle. And I was like, yes, fortunate. But if I was putting capital in that from my bank, oh man, that would have been hard to get over. And the fact that we just talked about it, people don't have the money nowadays. So that's 2024 over with.
Mm. What a year.
What are your thoughts on 2024? Because I know not everyone agrees. Not everyone had the right holding, so to speak. So I'll let you just unravel your portfolio, but we'll talk about the news first as well. But overall thoughts, 2024, go.
It's been difficult. Um, it's been very different. I mean, 2023 and 2024, the cycle so far, very different from previous cycles. 2017, I was quite late into 2017. I didn't get until August. So I sort of caught the back end of it. I mean, still went from 3K to 20K BTC. But then obviously altcoins had their last hurrah in like January, and then bear market hit 2018. So I didn't get the full experience of 2017, but I did see the mania for sure, and just everything going up. Obviously was in the full cycle for 2020 and 2021. That was obviously very different because you had COVID. You had that COVID crash right in the middle, and we actually talked on the traders live stream last night about the difficulty of like the alt season of this cycle compared to or trading altcoins, holding altcoins from this cycle to the last, because in the last cycle you had that COVID crash which sort of reset the market in March, April time of 2020, and then alt season like really kicked off in the following January. So you only had about 9 months where BTC outperformed altcoins, and it didn't seem like they got obliterated in the same way that they did this cycle. So you only had to wait and accumulate and dollar cost average for about 9 months, and then you got your big reward, because literally from January to May, everything just flew up. Um, and it was a case of a rising tide raised all ships. Obviously, there were outperformers, but the entire market just seemed to go up together, BTC and alts. Whereas this cycle, as we well know now, it has been just the Bitcoin only show with a very few select altcoins that have done very, very well. And the alt BTC pairs have just been absolutely battered for basically 2 years. You've had a couple of, we had what you might call a mini alt season last, was it end of 2023, start of 2024? And that's when everyone thought, oh, here we go, we're just getting started, especially because BTC then went on to break all-time highs in March. And of course, that was when the Bitcoin dominance broke down in previous cycles, when Bitcoin broke all-time highs. So you thought, okay, maybe we're in a left translated cycle. This is the last, little pump. Alts are going to have their little alt season. And but obviously it wasn't the case. Bitcoin just broke, or slightly broke, all-time highs, and then we went into chop mode for 4 or 5 months. And it's really funny because you always say, "Oh, sell in May and go away," and every year you think, "No, not this year," and every year, every single year, yeah, it works every time. And again, going back to 2021, we had that when we had that huge crash of 50% pullback that happened in May.
Yeah.
Like, it always seems to happen. There's always a big drop in the summer, and yet no matter how how many times you think about it, read about it, and people say it, you still struggle to act upon it.
Absolutely spot on. I
Mm.
mean, it it seemed so easy when we think back. Oh, look at that! Look at them gains. Oh, take profit, buy less altcoins, just hold Bitcoin. It's fine.
Mm.
And then you got excited by the left translated cycle. You got excited about the ETF, obviously being the main catalyst of the approval. That little nub above the all time high. Oh, look at this! It was very different. And yes, I had a lot of altcoins, but I did have heavy Bitcoin, so I was starting to see, oh, hello, this is quite nice. But I mean, we'll talk about our mistakes later on, but Christ, I mean, when you think about the year and you think about dominance and you think about how different this cycle has been, it's been very odd. Like
Mm.
altcoins running. And I think in one of my videos yesterday, I talked about, well, if we repeat Q1 of last year, it could see Bitcoin at like 170, 180K, which is mad from today's prices. But we've got to remember, you touched on it in your prior cycles. There'll be people looking to make big money I'm forgetting that Bitcoin was 15K at one point at the start of the cycle.
Mm.
We're going into that mania stage, and people will forget. And there will be people like Michael Saylor and others buying Bitcoin at six figures, thinking it's going to go to much higher. Whereas, hopefully, people like ourselves and other people who've been watching and listening for a long, long time, been in the market, and it comes to that mindset point of how early have you been? Have you been in the market long enough? That it might well just end very, very early because people have made a lot of money. You got to think 15K up to 200K sounds mental, and it is mental. But people will be buying 100K expecting to go to a million. That's where we're going to find Bitcoin, and the same with altcoins in prior cycles. Buy higher, expected to go higher, and yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a year, and I think I've survived just about, not to get too much FOMO and stuff, but ultimately it's been a really mixed cycle for like many things. There's not been as many narratives going off. There's been a few little introductions of narratives such as ordinals and runes have been doing pretty well in little cyclical periods. You've had AI kind of stuff going on for the start of the year. And then at the end of the year, we had this wild little rally from XRP and XLM because of regulation clarity. And I was like, what the
Mm.
hell? So that came out of left field. So yeah, it's not been the greatest of years if you've been holding altcoins. And I'm going to just open up this document now and talk about certain things that's happened, right? So in a nutshell, well, I won't bore you to death, but we obviously had the ETFs added in January, which
Mhm.
I didn't expect. And the performance of the ETF of Bitcoin has been, I think, brilliant. Even yesterday's data's coming in now, and it's unbelievable. And we've got a lot of money that has been added to the market, and I think it's equivalent of 30. I can't even remember 37,000 BTC added essentially to it. Oh no, $37 billion. Sorry, get my numbers right. Um, that's quite a lot, and I think in terms of overall, I wasn't expecting that to happen. When we compare that to Ethereum, which was randomly added in May, it's nowhere near as powerful. No, like it took it till like November for it to actually start gaining some traction, which is interesting, I know. But that's just the data, right? That's just literally the simple data of it. And in terms of that, it's led to that early alt season, that early rise, that dominance run as well, following on from that into then what we see in now at the back of the year, Donald Trump back in power. Professional bullshitter, maybe. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see where that
Crypto
goes.
fan.
Yeah,
Although
pro crypto, of
there
course.
is that aspect that people have mentioned before, is that politicians will obviously say anything, to get support from people. So we'll see, what actually happens when he gets into power.
Oh, 110%. Like, I said it, and I think Bob Lucas said it, and a couple of other people say it. I'm not 100% convinced by the government being so pally with Bitcoin, where years and years ago they tried to ban it. I say the same about Michael Saylor. It's like, oh, look, great, it's banned. But in 2013, he was saying it was a casino table and it was the next thing to go bust. And like, I know you got to look at certain things, you got to change your opinion, and you got to be open minded, but you've got to think, why are the government so in bed with it? Why are they using and leveraging that community? And I don't think, obviously, honestly, don't think Donald Trump won because of crypto. No way.
No,
I just think he was the best, the best out of a bad bunch. I don't think he's very well liked across even people who voted for him. I don't think he's very well liked. But let's be honest, the prior regime, so to speak, that's been replaced has been absolutely dire, and their succession from Biden to Harris was absolutely awful, and I don't think they had any other alternative. Let's be honest.
no.
So stuff like that matters, and going back to it, yes, it's created a catalyst. It's created a narrative over the course of the end of this year, or last year, sorry. Going into this year, the inauguration's happening, what, 2 weeks' time? So
Yeah, 20th.
we don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. And again, we can talk about many things in terms of the review of the year, but what wasn't on my bingo card was the Ethereum ETF. What wasn't on my bingo card was the fact of XLM and XRP absolutely flying. Even Hedra Hashgraph flying at the end of the year, whereas some top, in my opinion, top technology-based assets have done shockingly bad.
Hmm.
And it really does put that into obvious speak. Technology doesn't mean it's going to go up in value, which is baffling.
I
And
mean, just look at what's happened this cycle. This cycle has been all
yeah,
about meme coins.
yeah,
There's
it's
been
been
the odd
meme
AI
coins and
play,
narratives.
but the meme coin casino, like all the meme coins on Solana and stuff, is just that's where all the market share seems to have gone this cycle. Um, but yeah,
It's
I mean, it just is what it is. You can't control it. I just don't think anyone really saw that at all. I mean, we had a bit of a meme cycle, didn't we? In the last cycle, we had a meme narrative in the last cycle.
yeah.
We went from layer ones. We had memes. We had DeFi. We had metaverse. But this cycle just seemed it's only been memes and AI.
I think the origins of what you're referring to came from GameStop and
Yeah.
that side of it, Wall Street bets, and that created that element around Dogecoin. Dogecoin back in the day
Mm.
was an established currency. It wasn't anything other than a currency. It still is a currency. And it went from that low value price of like whatever market cap to a giga one, basically, let's be honest.
Mm.
And it stayed there. That's then allowed like Toshiba, Floki, and other stuff. And that is now bred to the succession of the Solana ones, Dog with Hat. You've got, is it Bonk and God
Yeah.
knows whatever else, Popcat. Yeah, there's so many. Turbo, another one. There's all kinds of random ones. And then we're seeing this sort of in a very, very, very minute scale on Bitcoin runes, the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is so squeaky clean new, but that might, hopefully, fingers crossed, is the next narrative, which could be very, very interesting to see where they go. But someone said it not too long ago, and I always remember someone saying this was follow the cult, not the candle. And I thought, oh, that's good. I like that. And I think it is. And the biggest cult out there is Bitcoin. The biggest community, the biggest amount of wealth, and the biggest holder is Bitcoin. And when we talk about the second best from that is, we're talking about narratives and we're talking about obviously the likes of Ethereum, now Solana. And then you've got meme coins. You haven't got technology, you've got meme coins. I mean, look at XRP's prior cycle, shockingly bad. There's a cult there, but it's not really like the sort of cult that you'd expect to like come out the woodwork and go to like whatever price. Because some people genuinely do think in their cult, it's no offense to anyone, it's going to go to $500. It's not, but there's a difference between growth and technology, and the growth is mainly done from people. And there's a reason why they're buying it is because they like it. It's like when we're a kid, we want to bet on the Grand National. You didn't pick what horse was good. You picked what was the funniest name.
Yeah. What color do you like?
Literally. So it's a little bit worrying, but that's just the way it is. And cryptocurrency is still going through that kind of headache of the Wild West. And we're going back in like one of these articles here, the roundup of the year is regulation, landscape, challenges and opportunities, basically stating that obviously with the marketing cryptocurrency assets framework, which is that Mika thing, then you've got obviously Gary Gensler, and one thing that people love more than anything is an underdog. And I think when we talk about technology and the fact that some of it isn't that good, well, it's all right, but it's just quite hard to get into. I think the obvious is I want to buy a coin that looks good, I can relate to it, and I've seen it before. Pepe, for example, the obvious meme. Oh, I'll buy that. That's cool. Mhm. Why not? you
And
know,
it's a real shame because I actually thought that going into this cycle, the market was going to mature, and it was going to be about use case and adoption and technology, but just
you
hasn't
do.
been.
Yeah, I agree, and
It's been
we could talk.
degen.
Yeah, we can talk a lot about the obvious in the room of like DeFi and being able to make money and store your money and make it go further, grow your Bitcoin with altcoins with the technology. It just hasn't happened. It might happen, but I don't know. Like going forward in 10 years' time, we might look at this and go, you know what? The likes of I don't know XRP, Chainlink, whatever, might well be an absolute massive DAO as a DAO company, whatever that is very, very obvious. But today I don't see it. Not yet, anyways. I mean, I
Mm.
don't see mass adoption on a mass scale of everyone using it. Like, and we're not talking about like, what about if Chainlink goes head to head with Oracle, company wise, right? I can't see that anytime soon. I still think that barrier to entry is so hard, and the obvious is buy and hold Bitcoin. The narrative's there. Store of value. It works. You talk about meme coins. Oh, it's Dogecoin. It's pumped by Elon Musk. Kind of obvious. It holds its value because of that. Or people are just completely wrecked on it and they can't sell it. Or they've lost their money because they've lost their passwords. Probably the latter too. It just depends. It's so wild. So moving on into a little bit of why certain things have. We've touched on it in terms of obviously you could argue a lot of things, I'll be honest with you. But I think the main thing is the fact that Bitcoin has been so powerful. It's taken up a lot of the news, the headlines, the information, and I feel like people are not willing to make that jump into altcoins as much as it used to be. That's just maybe the fact that they're not high enough. The existing people are no longer here, or more importantly, they just don't care anymore. And hopefully, it's not the latter. I talked about this as well in terms of like video view share on YouTube, and it's wild. Like you see all these YouTubers with a lot of like views and a lot of subscribers. That their viewership's only about 4 or 5%, and I think it's the same for altcoins where the price isn't high enough for them to really realize. And I think that's like kind of obvious. And you look at the likes of, I don't know, AVAX, Polkadot. We'll talk about Ethereum in more detail, but they've really, really underperformed when you argue last cycle they did very, very well.
Mm.
So in terms of Bitcoin, we're here. I know there's a lot of Fibonacci's on here and a lot of wild stuff, but in terms of the Trump side of it, I've got it on my chart for his inauguration, which isn't too far away. We're currently at levels of resistance again, but we have broken above this lovely 100K level, which I'm hoping we stay above. But regardless of that, let's talk about Bitcoin dominance because I think, well, my opinion is, I don't know if guys is different. I think a lot of this drop is inflated by the fact of XRP, XLM, Hedra Hashgraph over the course of that period where they went berserk. And I do feel that if Bitcoin does a little bit of a run, we're probably going to start seeing going towards 60% because when we isolate XRP, for example, it's gained quite a lot of traction. This has gone from 1.2% up to like nearly 4%. It's at 4% now. If you
Mm.
remove that, it's back up at literally 60% levels. So that with the likes of XLM and obviously, yes, you could argue why has Bitcoin and the dominance changed so much? You've got to look at the obvious in the room, which is sorry, Ethereum fans, Ethereum has majorly struggled over the course of 2024. It really has dropped from almost 20% at certain points this year down to 12% of the market, which is absolutely disgusting. When you think about the ETF on Ethereum and obviously that side of it and think, oh, money is coming in. But there's many different reasons why we may have found that this has happened. One, their fees are different now. The ETF as well as another narrative. The fact that it's just difference in terms of how it kind of works is like probably one of the main reasons. And I feel it's interesting, but you've also got to remember as well, we talked about it in terms of Solana. Solana has changed massively. Obviously, it's had a bit of a pullback here, but over the course of 2024, it's had a fantastic year and its dominance has held up pretty aggressively, to be fair. And it uses Ethereum pretty well. So maybe the use of Ethereum is a bit more diluted nowadays. Who knows? But yeah, it's very very interesting to talk about it. And I think Gaz has got a few opinions on Ethereum, but ultimately the TA doesn't lie. It's been an absolute shocking
It's been
situation.
in what's it been in a downtrend for over a year, isn't it? Where did it top?
Oh, we could probably argue 2020,
September 2022.
September 2020.
Wow,
Yeah.
over 2 years.
Yes, and I've had this on my chat for a while. This little red line. I know it's quite hard to see. Let's go to the weekly time frame. I feel that alone is pretty disgusting. And we could go back down to 2020 levels, like at the start of the prior bull market. That could be the trigger. But I think that is just disgusting. I do. I think that's awful. And you think about like entire move structure from this point to the lows, we're well below the 786. And this is now
Mm.
acting as levels of resistance. That's like disgusting.
Yeah,
Oh,
like the only real ray of hope you have is that there is a double bottom,
yeah.
and that the Bitcoin dominance has made a lower high on the weekly time frame. But as you say, like we have had a fairly decent drop on dominance, but it's probably been taken up by a couple of select altcoins as opposed to what's happened in prior cycles where when Bitcoin dominance tanks, it's because the entire altcoin market has risen. Whereas as you can see, XRP is probably a huge chunk of that Bitcoin dominance
Yeah.
collapse.
And XLM
Well,
hedge hash
not even
graph.
collapse, it's just pulled back a little bit, hasn't it? And
It
as you
yeah.
showed on the Bitcoin dominance chart, it might even not be dropping fully anyway. I mean, so as you can see on the Bitcoin dominance chart there, you've made a clear lower high on the weekly time frame. We need to at least get a weekly close below that previous low, to confirm a lower low, and then you're actually in a trend. But at the
I don't see
moment,
it happening.
it's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it? Again, if you slap the moving average 21 on there, this is the first time that we've closed below the weekly moving average 21 since the beginning of the cycle. We had a little deviation you can see there midway through. I can't remember what month that is, like summer of 24. Very quick little, yeah, that
We had
little,
one there in January,
oh, January, sorry. Yeah,
but
but very quick.
that's on the weekly. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if we go down to like the daily, we had quite a lot of like trend breaks, which kind of caught people out. Like here,
Mm,
for example, you've got like this proper, really weird kind of like top, and then we went up and we went absolutely, we nuked it. This is the start of the year. This is when we had that altcoin alt
yeah,
season. People were
mini
thinking
alt
that's the
season.
top. We've topped at 55. Woo, let's go. And then we carried on motoring randomly. And then it obviously all stopped around here. This is like March time where it kind of just went no Bitcoin only. Then boom. So that was a bit ugly. Yeah, you can see
That
it here.
that
Pretty
that
ugly.
looks quite promising at the moment on that daily time frame. Yeah, it's a big drop. It's made a lower high. It is technically still trending down. We just really need to see it get below that previous low of what 55% ish. And then the other question is, as we've already mentioned, it might only be select alts that go, and then how low does dominance go? It might only go down to 40 odd percent.
Now this is where you get the optimism and the hope and all the belief bollocks, right? Is this chart. This is a total 3/BTC, which kind of underpins it a little bit. This looks better, but we'll need to wait for more confirmation. If this carries on trickling up, it's good. You need this to go up and you need dominance to go down. So basically, this is a total 3/BTC pairs. Now, finally, we could say, well, we might have bottomed. Hey, it's took its fucking time, though. Um, so fingers crossed this structure point here from this level has held and we've created basically a foundation. But that being said, I'm still uneasy the fact that, well, it's XRP, it's XLM, it's Hedra Hashgraph, it's a couple of minute things that have really popped and went from like 1% up to like 2 or 3, 4%, creating that share going the other way. What we really need is this to turn around, this to show a sign of life. And the dominant chart of Ethereum, as we've alluded to it, kind of has not. And it kind of worries me that we've had a pullback into this EMA and we've completely clattered off it. And then, yeah, this like a new structure point? Are we going to go from there to there? And have we rejected again? And are we going to go lower into the 11%? Hopefully not. But we do need Ethereum to actually do something for
Yeah,
once. But
as we
it's
say,
kind of worrying.
hopefully
Bit
a double
ugly.
bottom there. I saw an interesting tweet the other day about how Solana might actually be the new metric for alt season. So Solana BTC as opposed to ETH BTC. And Solana BTC is actually quite an interesting chart if you can get that up.
It's ugly. It's really odd. It looks, in
Well,
my opinion,
I
look at
I
that.
like that in the sense that you've deviated those range lows,
Yeah,
which is quite a bullish sign. Um,
that could be a trend reset coming up very soon.
yeah,
And
I mean,
then when you look at the USD price of Solana, it's very interesting because for most of the part, this here looked exactly like the Bitcoin chart in USD. It looked very, very similar. Actually, it probably still does look pretty similar because it had that big breakup. It doesn't look too different, does it?
no, it
Quite.
looks, yeah,
Apart from
very
this big
similar.
drop here, it
Yeah.
doesn't look too different. But that's the thing. Like Solana is, I think, where most of the traffic is. Not where most of the volume is. It's just where the traffic is, where the people are.
Mm.
You got to obviously look at the Ethereum chain is going to be a bit bulkier for the obvious. Let's be honest, USDT and all that kind of stuff, and that's where the biggest volume trap is. But in terms of users and the amount of percentage share of meme coins, it is at the minute, in my opinion, per market cap, Solana.
Sure, Solana.
But we've also got to remember Solana's easy to use, it's obvious to use, and it's going to capture that kind of imagination that I want to get rich quick. But that's where the difference lies. If Ethereum and if the altcoins trickle up a little bit, let's like go up alongside Bitcoin, it might bring people back. And everyone's notifications on their phone are going to be like, "Oh, hello." And I think we've seen that twice now. We've seen that at the start of last year and the end of last year, where people returned. People
Mm.
came back because prehistoric apps on their phone just went, "Hello, do you want to
Yeah,
invest in me again? Do you want to
that's
touch me again?"
that's the problem. That's the big problem we've got this cycle, or had this cycle with an alt season, is that it's obviously driven by retail and newcomers, um, and we just haven't they haven't come back. Not only are financial conditions tougher just in terms of everyday life than they were in 2020, 2021. You got to remember we had lockdowns back then as well, so people were stuck at home on their phones, on their laptops, looking for something to do, looking for ways to make money.
100%.
And then also a lot of them did get burnt in the last cycle, so they're very reluctant to come back.
A lot
So
of people got burnt in 2017 as well, but they still kind of came back. But I don't think
yeah,
that 2017 cycle can be quantified to the 2021 because of obviously, yes, you're right. A lot of people may necessarily have never came into any sort of financial investing in their
mm,
lives, came into it. It's like,
yeah,
hello.
yeah. The 2017 wasn't really. I mean, I only got into it by luck.
Yeah,
The fact that there was someone I knew from the military that was talking about it on Facebook. So it wasn't this widespread, whereas 2020, 2021, everyone was talking about it. Everyone was talking
yeah.
about crypto. Everyone was in it. Everyone was trading it. So 2017, it was still quite niche. Um, and as I say, we've the people that we would have got back into the market, we probably teased back in end of 2023, start 2024, and then the market just dumped on them again. So genuinely, that it might not be possible to get that. So I mean, I definitely don't think we get an alt season like we got in 2020, 2021 again. It
No,
just can't. There's not enough money or liquidity to pump every altcoin out there because the saturation is too high. Um, and then B, just the interest just doesn't seem to be there. And it seems this cycle has been very rotational, it's very player versus player. And it isn't that classic rising tide raising all ships scenario. And so it's
100%.
probably going to continue like that until the end of the cycle.
I think there will be some wild ones that will pop off, but I think you're right. Last cycle, and even the one prior to that as well, it was very much everything went up because the interest was there, and they could. You probably will find that there will be reactions at certain points because they're that low in terms of BTC value, and that BTC value being so low will increase that lack. Well, no, it will give you that liquidity trap where there's not enough liquidity, a couple million volume go up. Look at RSR recently, like an old favorite,
Mm.
absolutely battered, low volume, and then all of a sudden, big volume, boom, it went rocket. Like, say, probably XLM and stuff like that did the exact same thing. So we might see a reaction, but we might only see realistically 40, 55% gains on the BTC pairs on your altcoin, which looks great in hindsight, but ultimately you'd be expecting 3, 4, 5X's in price.
It's
Like,
a
some will do that, but
Yeah,
not all of them, nowhere near.
it's a far cry from last cycle where like 100% gain on your altcoin was just that's not bad. Whereas
Mm.
now you look at an alt BTC pair at 100% move and you're like, wow, that'd be quite lucky to get out there. I mean, if you
Yeah,
just grab any alt BTC pair and see where it'd have to go to make 100%, it might be bear market PTSD, or like
capitulation.
Bitcoin dominance bull market PTSD, where you're just like altcoins are just never going to rally again. But it just really does seem as though a 100% move, to double your Bitcoin on an altcoin now just seems like you have to just pick the right lottery ticket.
I think for context, we're talking BTC pairs here, not USD. I think
Mm.
people think an alt season is when everything goes up because Bitcoin's going up. So if we're talking about a normal example, I'll show you actually on here. So let's talk about Polkadot. Great example, $55 prior cycle, right? Yeah, great, $7 now. But in the prior cycle, Bitcoin was 69,000 tops, right? It's now $101,000. And this is $7.82. That's
Not
it's
even
reflected
managed to get over
because of wow.
$10. I mean, we wicked over $10, but like convincingly, Dot hasn't got above $10 this cycle. It was 55 at the peak of the last cycle when Bitcoin was 69. Bitcoin is now 100K, and Dot isn't even above $10.
Now,
It's insane.
what we're going to simulate here is what if Bitcoin does well and continues going higher? But let's be honest here, Bitcoin isn't going to go to like 700, 800,000 bucks here. Not in this cycle, my opinion. But Polkadot might well reclaim the yearly high or wherever it wants to go in terms of this sort of period, right? Which is roughly around 1,500 Satoshis. That's 100%. So basically, if it gets there and Bitcoin stays the same price, it'll be around $14, $15. And I think, like, let's be honest, I think if we're looking for a 3x here, I think you're going to find it pretty interesting to see where it goes from that point. I think it'll really struggle doing a 3x.
The thing as well, the thing you've got to bear in mind as well is if it did do a 100% move, the amount of people that again might just be Bitcoin dominance PTSD, but the amount of people that would be like, do you know what, I'm going to take that because if
Yeah.
you look at the bounces it's had since
Oh,
the
yeah.
beginning of 2023, I don't think it's ever done 100% since 2023.
Nah, if I'm holding anything like that, any of my altcoins that does like a 3-4x, I will be out of it straight away.
This thing, I don't even think you get a 3-4x.
No,
I think
I don't either.
if
And
you
this is
look,
what I mean. Like, yes, the USD prices will be inflated because Bitcoin's done well, right?
hmm,
Obvious. And we've seen that with a couple of assets, but it's a rough guess. It
what
really is to see what's going to do well.
What's that rally on .btc at the beginning of 2024, just to your left?
Absolutely shocking. So if we're talking
From
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 October
the absolute bottom to the absolute top. Yes, not even
that's
100%.
82. That was one of the main reasons why I sold it, is because it didn't have enough of a kick in that run. I swapped it out for other things because everything else performed better. Even this here was like when everything was going a little bit crazy at the end of the year, roughly the same sort of time frame, by the way. Um, it did a 136, which was actually a bit better, but there was a lot of hype around it then. And to be honest with you, the market hype was pretty big at that point as well. It was pretty nice to see something spark to life, but they've returned back to normality again, quite literally, which is a
And
little bit worrying.
that's the thing that didn't happen last cycle is that once alts started running, they kept running. So as I
Yeah,
say, you had that COVID crash in March 2020, which reset the market. Alts bled for 9 months, but then you got the alt season from January to May where there was pullbacks, but it was just a sustained uptrend. I mean, you look at the .btc chart there. Look, go back to the 2021. You had pullbacks, but it was just a straight vertical line up.
yeah. It's mad how low that is, and I think that's where people are going to get hurt the most is with altcoins in this situation. Yes, don't get me wrong, we may well on some reclaim some of these levels, but I think it's going to be few and far between. I know there's a lot of people. We're not really picking on Dot. We can pick bloody literally any of the charts in the top 30. They'll look like this. That's the thing. I mean,
90% of
yeah.
alts probably.
Apart from maybe Solana, apart from maybe Tron and a
Mm.
couple of others, but wow, they do. They've lost so many gains, but people forget about that side of it, and then they look at the other. And I think when we talk about mistakes, and we can go on to that in terms of the obvious here, like mistakes have been made for a lot of us, and I mention my mistakes pretty openly. I mean, let's be honest. I bought more altcoins versus Bitcoin in the FTX crash. Probably shouldn't have done it.
Mm.
And that's where the biggest line in the sand was for me in terms of altcoins is thinking, wow, they've actually really struggled this cycle.
Yeah, I mean, again, to use Dot just as a simple example, Dot was down at what $3 after the FTX crash. And so
Yeah,
you look at that and go, right, $3 back to all-time highs, $55 is a huge gain.
yeah,
So I want exposure to that. But as we've just said, Bitcoin has gone from 15K to 100K. Dot has gone from $3.50 to max $10. And you
Yeah.
go, ah, and in
And
2 years as well.
I remember buying some Bitcoin at like 16, 17K thinking that's all right. I'm happy with that. Then I bought a lot more individual units of, like, say, Polkadot and other ones at those lows, thinking that's low. Not
Mm,
put it into context or consideration, thinking that, oh, Bitcoin's going to go from 15K to 100K and altcoins are not going to go anywhere near with it. They didn't at all. And that was
they,
where I lost a lot of money. I don't even want to work it out, but I'm going to say at least, well, I don't want to say double figures, but there's a lot of Bitcoin that I could have easily had by just not doing it. And when we think
mm,
about some of them holds actually went like down 70% versus Bitcoin is massive. And I was lucky enough to have profit from the prior cycle. And I was like, yes, fortunate. But if I was putting capital in that from my bank, oh man, that would have been hard to get over. And the fact that we just talked about it, people don't have the money nowadays. If
mm,
people did that at those lows and got destroyed, I can understand fully why people haven't came, because it's not the same. It's you have to evolve, and even now the narratives are a little bit different. Now we've got Bitcoin mined in the stock market. That's a different narrative. We've obviously mentioned other narratives as well, which are coming out of the woodwork. And I think that technology side just isn't enough to kind of warrant an investment unless you've got max conviction and you've got big bollocks. I think it's really hard to do that
mm.
personally.
Yeah. Um, it's been a rough cycle, and just different to previous ones. And it's all about having to adapt. It's funny though, because you take it for granted. You think, oh, it's been different to previous cycles, but this is really only. I mean, Bitcoin has been around since 2011. You could argue 2013 was its first cycle, but barely anyone was around then. So two proper cycles where you've got had fairly mainstream eyes on it. So the 2017 and the 2020. So you sort of take for granted, say, oh, this cycle has been completely different, but it's only the third ever cycle. It's
Yeah,
not like it's been around for a century, and you go, oh, this is how it always goes. And I think everyone has been um, sort of fell victim to that, just taking it for granted that, oh, it'll go the same as the previous two cycles, when it's only been around for two cycles.
I think people have been majorly outdone by Bitcoin. And I think
Mm.
even though when we've been teaching on our courses and throughout the years, Stack Sats always have Bitcoin, always aim to grow it. I think people have missed out completely by maybe people talking about altcoins too much. And I could probably put myself in that boat thinking, well, I like it, but it's all risk. Like percentage of
Mm.
risk of an altcoin versus Bitcoin has always been very, very different. And that's luckily saved my ass. So in terms of me asking you, in terms of wins this year, what's been your best performing asset?
It's got to be near protocol, I think.
So
Buying
yeah,
that at $1. But again, didn't if you look at that on the BTC pair, it ran up to I think it bottomed around. I might be wrong, but I believe it was something. Oh, in fact, let me just check the chart rather
I
than
think
lying to everyone.
I remember buying near at around $1 and around 3,000 sats, and I think
Yeah,
it went to
that's
11,
what I was going to say.
12,000 sats.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So it bottomed. Yeah, you're right. 3,500 ish, or 3,175 to be precise, and
Yeah,
it topped at about 12,500 sats. But again, didn't take enough profits, because again, you take it for granted that again that was the March April of 2023, and you thought, oh, Bitcoin's just broken all time highs, also finally going to start to run, and it tagged that 12,000 sats level about three times, I think,
yeah.
and then just died. Um,
That's the annoying part of it is like you're expecting it to like pull back. Not we're not saying go on a massive giga run, but they were down so much versus
mm,
BTC. You expected some sort of respite or some sort of resistance tag a little bit higher up, but it just didn't come. And that was one of the best ones. And same for me. Near Protocol did very well for me. I took about 30% off the table, thinking that's decent. I've made some freaking decent units here. It's been a while since I've done that over the course of the bear market. You don't get those wins of units, and
mm,
it just nothing followed through with it. Yeah, I had a couple of pre-sales that did okay, but nowhere near as like obvious as that. And when we talk about obvious, we're talking about a top 30 coin that's kind of made itself do very, very well. And it was destroyed by FTX in a way in terms of the liquidity side of it with our media research and whatnot. But wow, I mean, between that and Bitcoin, for me, the obvious two, by far, by far. And then we talk about Bitcoin miners have done pretty well in little bouts of the
They've
cycle.
been volatile though, haven't they?
Oh, the
They've
most
been
volatile things I've
frustrating.
it's mental. I'm looking to take some profit soon on some of them, but bloody hell, honestly, it's up and down like a bloody yo-yo.
The
It's crazy.
irony is, because I looked at those Bitcoin miners, I was like, yes, they're obviously going to be volatile because they're beta assets to Bitcoin. But I was like, as long as Bitcoin does well, they'll do well, and they should be more stable than, say, altcoins, for example,
No,
because they're a traditional market asset. No, they've been
no.
more volatile than anything, and the fact that's been frustrating, very similar to altcoins. I mean, I was going to make this point earlier about altcoins. The trouble we've had is not only have they not performed well in the BTC pairs, but they've not even kept up in the USD pairs either,
Yeah.
obviously, with a few exceptions. So it's sort of been like a double whammy. But as well with the Bitcoin miners, like they trend okay when Bitcoin's doing very well, but then as soon as Bitcoin has a wobble, everything just collapses,
Oh,
and
it's scary.
they pull back much harder. Same with altcoins, same with the Bitcoin miners. They pull back harder than Bitcoin does. So you just sort of like, wow, it's just very difficult to make any wins on anything other than Bitcoin.
Altcoins are the same in the obvious sense that like if Bitcoin goes up 2% on the open and then Bitcoin like the altcoin like 1%, if Bitcoin loses that open kind of margin that it's created,
Mm.
they go down. They're like
Yeah,
ripple in value. Like what? How was that down -6? How?
yeah. We
What's
we
happened?
just haven't seen any confidence or strength in altcoins. Apart from, as we say, you get these outliers like XRP, XLM. I remember Fetch AI very early in the cycle where they just run on their own. But again,
Injective was another one.
Bitcoin pulled back. It's
Yeah, there was a few. That's what annoys me. There's a few, and I think I think it's going to continue this cycle, and we've got to be very, very selective. And that's why you've got to have some little plays randomly, maybe some low caps somewhere, just in case, because you might find the next big meme coin on Solana. I'm not saying do it, but I'm saying you might find something that does well. Look at Bitcoin runes as an example. If you're in the Bitcoin ecosystem, maybe it's worth a punt. It's just that situation. Like I'm a big holder of stacks, and that's been a massive underperformer for me. But
mm,
I don't think it's ready to go yet. I think maybe eventually it probably will once the developers are building on it. But in terms of my performing assets, I think Nia was by far my best over the 2024 period at the start of the year. I took a lot of profit off that, did very well. And Bitcoin by far has been
it's been
relatively,
quite boring, isn't it? This cycle,
yeah.
like and you know what's I've read a couple of tweets on X about people already feeling sort of burnt out and fatigued and almost like looking forward to the bull market being over,
Yeah, 100%.
because it has just been very rotational. There's been no, it's been it sounds really funny to say because it's not supposed to be. It's a financial market. It's not supposed to be fun, but that is kind of how it's felt. The last cycle felt
Yeah.
quite fun, whereas this cycle just seems very uh, like a drag. Almost. You've just
And
had these
we're at
couple of spells of like excitement, and then the rest of it's just like, oh, like that summer we had of just chop,
nothing.
chop, chop.
If you're a trader, I do feel sorry for you. This is why I kind of don't bother as much now. But again, we talk about the obvious in the room here. It feels so different, but at the same time, we are supposed to be in the mania stage now. That run up to 1 year after halving is supposed to be where it all goes crazy. We might well have a crazy Q1.
And it could. The market might be waiting for the inauguration of Donald Trump because, as we know, markets don't like uncertainty.
Yeah,
So, and that's why I think, obviously, I mean, it's historical. It's happened the previous two cycles where the week of the election, whatever low gets put in that week never gets revisited, and it still hasn't. I think
yeah,
it was 13K in 2020 and around $600 in 2016. Those levels have never been retested. So I can't. I think it was it 65K or something like that, the weekly low of
yeah.
the election week.
That
So
was a crazy run.
we'll probably never revisit that again, if history repeats. But that's why the markets reacted to that once the election was over. It was like that's probably what the summer chop was all about. People going on their holidays, low liquidity, wait to see what happens when the big boys come back and what happens
Yeah.
with the election.
And,
Which is all easy in hindsight. Should have just known
yeah.
that.
And now we're talking 1 year from halving. It's often really good. It's obvious, but I feel you're right. The fatigue of people, I feel it the same. Like it's mad, and the rotation's been crazy. And even some of my lowest performing assets, I've not lost loads of money on them, but ultimately I expected much better, even in a bear market or even in a choppy market, and it just
And that's the
done
problem.
it.
That's where, because we've learned from the two previous cycles that if you buy things in the bear market, you get rewarded. That
Yeah,
hasn't really been the case on a lot of
high
things.
conviction, high rewards. Oh,
Yeah, and like we don't mean to keep picking on Dot, but it's just one. It's something that we've both held and both had high conviction for, and just hasn't performed. Like when we bought at like $3.50, we're like, oh, this is fantastic. This is going to at least 10x to $30. Even if you went, okay, maybe it won't get to all time highs again, but $30, you thought,
yeah.
yeah, that's
I
like a
I
good
I
all time.
thought I was playing the obvious card from the prior cycle, which was buy at $3, it goes to 55. Sweet. I wasn't expecting it to go to $55 because I know the supply and the inflation's changed, but I was expecting at least a 20, 25, $30. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, in the prior cycle, I bought Cardano in 2017,
Mm.
made money. Bought it again at like stupid prices, made a lot of money. Thinking the exact same rinse repeat of buy an established asset, buy something
Mm.
that's built in the bear market, buy at the lows. Did that. Tick, tick, tick. Did it deliver? No. I won't.
Even Ethereum has only double. I mean, what was the bear market lows on Ethereum? Ethereum bottomed before Bitcoin, didn't it? It
Yeah,
bottomed at 990 or 980, something like that. Let's just call it $1,000. Um, but if you bought, because I would be very surprised if anyone actually bought that thinking that was the bear market low for ETH, because as I say, it was
I thought
before
lower.
Bitcoin. But if you thought, if you bought it at the Bitcoin bear market lows, I think ETH was around 1,500 maybe. Let me double check on that. But even that's only done like a 2x,
Yeah, it's
give or take.
not grand. When you think the performance of Bitcoin from 15K low,
1,300 it was.
yeah, it's the relationship is in simple terms is how has altcoins performed versus Bitcoin from say the average of Bitcoin being 15K to now at 100K. Like there's nothing that's outperformed it, and that's the thing. I think over the last 3 years, nothing's realistically outperformed Bitcoin in terms of satoshi values, which is scary.
Mm.
That just tells you where it is. And again, going to another question, I think it's the same answer as me, but I think Polkadot has by far been my worst performing asset of 2024, which is why I sold it. I thought, fuck this, I can't be bothered anymore. Kind
Mm.
of got that fatigue with it. And even though I didn't lose physical money, I've lost a lot of profit on it from the prior cycle, which is a bit annoying,
And it's just
but it's
opportunity
the way
cost
it
as
is.
well, because it could have been in something else.
Yeah, it could have been. I could have put that in. Well, let's be honest. I've already said if I held Bitcoin throughout the course of this and maybe held more Bitcoin related assets, I probably would have been much, much better off, but it just hasn't happened. And I
Should
don't
have
want
just
to.
bought Solana.
Yeah. Well, I tried to buy Solana and I had the conviction to buy it at $15, but it was in such a free fall and going down to like $8, it scared the living shit out of me. It's like, fuck that. Should have done it
And the
literally.
thing is, like, it's so easy to look back. Oh, you should have bought Solana. It's so low, blah blah blah. But the big performers at the end of last cycle, I remember that was it Solana, AVAX, and Luna.
And
Those
they all
two
got hit
just
by
went,
FTX and
they went
all the
crazy.
kind of the
Yeah.
collateral damage of that. Unbelievable.
So Luna obviously went to zero, literally, and AVAX hasn't
Solana was
even.
98% drop from the
Yeah,
high.
and
Like most
AVAX.
people go, I'll just wait.
Yeah.
Obviously, it just went V-shaped recovery and off it went. But Christ,
So like Luna hasn't recovered. AVAX has done okay this cycle, but nothing spectacular. So
it's
it's
one of
like
those. Isn't it?
it's you can't just say, oh, you should have just bought Solana. It was obvious. It wasn't obvious at all. And again, I mean, you just look at the broader altcoin market. Um, Nothing really has gone So yes, easy in hindsight to say, I should have bought Solana, but I don't think anyone could have foresaw the kind of performance, not only against Bitcoin, but versus all the other altcoins.
I
You
think
would never imagine it would have outperformed ETH.
no, 100% no. I think Solana could flip if ETH doesn't sort its shit out.
I think
But
so. And as I say, I think, as I said earlier, Solana and BTC might be the new alt season metric.
yeah, I think you look at the dominance. It only takes a little swing there, and you got to look at obviously how good the wallets are on Phantom with Phantom, sorry, on Solana.
Hmm.
You can bloody use your Ethereum on there. Anyways, and what people want to do, I'll just use Solana because it's just the same. It's faster. It's
Yeah.
actually cheaper. It doesn't crash like fuck. It's just one of those. And yeah, hold more Bitcoin was probably the right answer for most people. It might well rotate into altcoins. We may well see those 2 or 3 X's, but I can't see everything as a blanket doing that. I just see the obvious. Probably is the obvious that will do well.
And the
But
final caveat, which we'll probably go into in next week's video, is what if we top out in Q1 and not Q4?
the
But
end of the cycle is coming. Ooh.
we'll talk about that in another video. Otherwise, we'll be here for another hour.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, anyways, I think it's time to wrap up. Let's be honest. I think we've covered a lot here in terms of what's happened this year, or last year, sorry, and what could be potentially happening with altcoins and why most of them have done pretty
Poor,
average, poor.
poor to average.
But yeah. Anyways, thank you for joining. First video of the year, different
Yeah.
video. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you've got this far.